Have you ever watched a horror movie setup, the creepy house, the masked figure, and thought, what if this was hilarious? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're diving deep into a short story called People Person that takes all those classic horror tropes and flips them on their head. Instead of screams, you get laughs. So let's break down how it pulls off this amazing trick.
So that's the big question, right? How on earth does a trip to a serial killer's house, a scenario that should be absolutely terrifying, end up being funny? It all comes down to one really simple but incredibly powerful idea. And there it is. Believe it or not, this entire story came from that one little writing prompt. The whole engine of the story is this idea of misreading social cues. It's not about the guy in the mask, it's about a massive escalating misunderstanding.
All right, so let's get into it. The comedy kicks off right away with this perfect collision of two totally different worlds, all wrapped up in our two main characters.
So on one side, you've got Colin. He is the ultimate corporate salesman, works for Fib Investments, has the perfect smile, and his whole job is gentrifying neighborhoods. Then, on the other side, you've got John Doe. He lives in the middle of nowhere at 666 Chainsaw Lane. Yeah, that's Chainsaw Lane, just spelled fancy. And he's rocking a filthy hockey mask. It's the perfect setup for a horror movie, but with the twist.
For Colin, everything, and I mean everything, is a transaction. He's so deep in his sales mode that he can't see anything else. He gives this brutally honest, kind of sociopathic pitch, and when John Doe just stands there silently, menacingly, Colin thinks, wow, this guy is really listening. He completely misreads the dead silence as a sign of keen interest.
And this is where it gets really good, the house tour. This is where Colin's single-minded focus on sales becomes like a superpower of obliviousness. He just filters out every single red flag, every sign of danger, and instead sees a property with, well, potential.
First stop is the living room. Imagine it, totally empty, ominous, windows all boarded up. For you or me, this would be a code red, get out now situation. But for Colin, he sees an opportunity. He's not thinking, I'm going to be a hostage. He's thinking, great natural lighting. It's our first big clue that he's reframing literal horror into a positive selling point.
Okay, moving on to the kitchen. Here, the evidence gets a little more specific, and Colin's interpretation gets even more, let's say, creative.
You've got a sink full of what is almost definitely the belongings of past victims. The stove is just disgusting. And what's Colin's professional assessment of this scene? A very minimalistic vibe. He is literally looking at evidence of multiple murders and rebranding it as a trendy interior design choice. All right, but surely, the bedroom. The clues here become basically impossible for any sane person to just ignore. But of course, Colin is not a sane person. He is a salesperson. He walks into what is very clearly a torture chamber, and the very first thing he notices, the only thing he cares about, is the resale value of the floor. He looks right at handcuffs chained to the wall and calls it avant-garde wall decor. He sees puddles of dried blood, and his brain just goes right past that to the hardwood underneath. His focus is so laser sharp, it's basically a shield against reality. So after all that, John Doe leads him to this heavily barricaded door, 5 locks on it. And of course, it leads down to the basement. I mean, at this point, what could possibly be down there that Colin could spin into a positive? Yep, a pile of human bodies. Okay, the game has to be up now, right? This is undeniable, incontrovertible. You could not possibly reframe a pile of dead people. Or so you'd think. This is the absolute peak of the comedy. He assesses a pile of corpses, and his professional brain just registers it as a small rodent problem. It's just another line item on the demolition budget. It's no biggie. Incredible. So the story doesn't end with a big, violent showdown. The real climax is the final, most profound misunderstanding of them all. And here's the craziest part. It works. His complete and total inability to read the room leads to a successful sale. He offers John Doe almost $500,000 for his murder house. The killer is probably so baffled he just blanks, and Colin takes that as a yes.
So, what's his big takeaway from this near-death experience? He calls his manager not to say, "Hey, I almost got murdered," but to announce that he's had a life-changing epiphany about minimalism. He wasn't in mortal danger. He was at an interior design seminar. He is so inspired.
So, how did the author pull this off? Let's get into the nuts and bolts, the literary mechanics that make this whole thing work so well.
It really comes down to three things. First, you've got dramatic irony. We, the audience, know what's up from the second we see that hockey mask. All the humor comes from watching Colin happily tap dance through a minefield he has no idea is there. Second, it flips the script on horror tropes. The cocky salesman is supposed to be the first victim, right? But here, he wins. And third, his character is just so extreme. Colin's sales brain is so powerful, it actually makes him immune to fear, because he literally can't even process the threat.
You know, this brilliant little story is more than just a funny tale about a clueless guy. It leaves us with a pretty powerful final thought that's worth thinking about. The central irony here is that the one thing that made Colin succeed, that unshakable, hyper-focus on making the sale, is the exact same thing that made him completely blind to the absolute horror of his situation. In a really bizarre way, his greatest weakness turned out to be his greatest strength. It saved his life. And that kind of leaves us with this final, lingering question. Colin's ambition to close a deal blinded him to a pile of dead bodies. It really makes you wonder, in our own lives, with our own goals and ambitions, what crucial details, terrifying or maybe even beautiful, are we completely blind to?